Hello, everybody. Good afternoon and welcome. Welcome for you all. Thanks very much for joining us this afternoon. So just before we begin, a little bit of housekeeping. This is our second foray into chatting to people who have a connection of some kind to the Lime Tree Theatre or the Bell Table, and that we think you'll find interesting to hear what they have to say. So as with the last time, we're muting everybody as they come into the meeting. But we will have a Q&A after about 30 minutes, so 35 minutes. So if you have a question at any stage during the course of the chat, just write your name into the chat button down there along the right hand side. So our guest today is Karl Daly. Karl has spent over 30 years in the financial services industry and has recently exited from his company Metis Ireland. He exited to form a new business called Humanli, which is basically there to, as he puts it, to inject new energy into the social impact space, and he has plans to move this forward. He spent about half his career employed and as an employee and the other half as a business owner. So he has a huge amount of experience in all the areas of work and business. And now he wants to bring that experience to bear to help others through his work with Humanli. So Karl, thanks a million for joining us. The facilitation, I suppose, of telling stories is very much what the Lime Tree Theatre and the Bell Table does. So you have a really interesting story to tell in terms of your career, but also in your early life. You did a lot of moving around the country when you were young.
I did indeed, Louise, and thanks a million for having me today. Pleasure to be here. Yeah, I did. My quick history of it. My dad was from Clare, Clare near Kilrush, and he met my ma in Dublin at college. She was a dub. So when I was expected, we were living in Ballykeefe in Limerick, near the Crescent Shopping Centre. And but I was physically born in Dublin because my mother went back to Dublin to have me. So I was brought into this world by Dr. Karl Mullen, who is a famous physician and rugby player, and that's where I got my name, believe it or not. If you look at his name and the spelling of his name, I was called after him, believe it or not. So I don't know if that was a last minute on the table type thing or not, but I never got into the history of that. But very quickly, 6 months after we came back to Ballykeefe, we moved to Sligo. So my dad joined Goulding's in Sligo. And I grew up in Ross's Point by the sea, which was idyllic. When you look back on it, it was a fantastic place to grow up. We stayed there till I was 12. My dad had joined the IDA in the interim, and he got the job of the Northwest, regional manager's job in the Northwest, which was based in Lifford in Donegal, and we moved to Ballybuffet. And the reason for that was that at the time, this was the 70s, so we were talking between 74 and 78 when I lived in Ballybuffet. And Lifford was on the border with Strabane. So my dad worked in Lifford, and literally you drove across a bridge and you were into the north of Ireland. And back in those days, things were a little precarious, as you can imagine. And there's one story that I remember, which it kind of changed a lot for me. You know, I grew up fairly quickly, and I kind of learned about life fairly quickly. The very first day that we arrived in Ballybuffet to live, I would have been, as I said, about 12 years of age. So I was going to national school. So the first day in national school, we were warned by my parents that there was a certain family, and do not be friendly with those people, and just be careful and keep your distance type thing. And as it turns out, day one, Karl went to school, and I was put down sitting beside a guy who was one of the guys from this family. So we ended up chatting during the day, got friendly with him. And in those days, there was no mammy in an SUV truck to pick you up from school. We actually walked home from school. It was a couple of miles. So we strolled down home, the two of us together. And I went in home all excited and announced I'd made a new friend and shouted out the name. They were looking at me going, I thought I told you not to. But anyway, look, between the jigs and the reels, this family were living just across the road and slightly down from us, and I got friendly with this guy. And that went on for maybe a couple of years, but things changed very drastically one particular day. We used to go up to the bog and help a local farmer to cut turf. And that's just what you did, and you got a bit of money for it. And we were up in the bog one fine day, and there was a loud bang. And we didn't know what was going on. We heard this noise. But when we came back home, word came through that evening that there'd been an explosion, and that a local guy who'd have been maybe 10 years older than us, in his 20s or whatever, had been killed. And it turned out that there was two guys were going across the border, and they were going across what were called at the time an unapproved road. That would be a kind of a back road where there was no patrolling, there was nothing official going on, and it was a back way to get in across the border from the Republic of Ireland into Northern Ireland, unnoticed. And they were going across the border. They had a bomb in their car, and they were going across the border to do damage, obviously. As it turns out, they came down the road around a corner, and there was an army or an RUC patrol that they didn't expect. And they panicked, and they tried to disarm the bomb, and it blew up. And the two boys were killed inside the car. And that's what we heard up in the bog that day. And to take it even a stage further, and I'm trying to think, as I said to you, 12, 13 years of age, but the family that I'd been told to avoid, and my friend that I'd become very friendly with at that time, and he was a lovely guy and we got on great, his family were involved in recruitment for a certain subversive organization at the time. And the family got the blame for recruiting this young guy that got killed. And within 24 hours, they were run out of town. So within 24 hours of this incident happening, the family were gone, the house was locked up, and I never saw my friend again, ever.
Oh my God.
No goodbye, no anything, no explanation, never saw him again. And to this day, I've no idea whatever happened to him.
Have you ever even tried? Have you tried? I was just saying it's a great story. There's a play in that. I'm sure somewhere. But did you ever try and look him up since, or see where they went, or no?
I suppose look at back then, Louise. There was nothing. When someone said goodbye, that was it.
Yeah.
I remember we had a phone in the middle of our house, and it was in the hall when you came in. And our phone number was Ballybuffet 108. That was it. And it was a twisty handle. Do you remember the black phone? You twist the handle, and you actually got through to an operator, and you asked for a number that you wanted. So if you wanted Ballybuffet 235, that was it. So what I'm saying is there was no connection then. And I suppose time has passed. No, I didn't. To answer your question, I've never looked him up. I don't know if he's dead or alive. I have no idea. I don't know.
Yeah, and what an amazing, it must have been a very tough time to be, because you're saying the mid-70s, that was when the troubles in the north were at the heights of.
Yeah. Well, they were, like, we used to go to, my mother would take us over to Strabane shopping because everything was so much cheaper over there. So we would drive up to Lifford for the day, and we'd park in my dad would organise parking, and we'd park there and we'd walk across the bridge. But we often did, and this used to happen. We used to stay with our mother because she'd always tell us to stay close. You would be asked by gangs of kids or youths what religion you were, and if you gave the wrong answer, you could be in trouble, And that was just kind of like it was very volatile. Yeah. It was a very volatile time, and I suppose when you look back on it and you reflect on it, you can see how far everybody has come.
Yeah.
The North and the Republic are open borders now. There's none of that carry on anymore. People travel through freely. So you have to really take your hat off to the people who got involved in the talks and the Good Friday Agreement and all that. But look at it wasn't that. It didn't mean a whole pile to me back then because I was a young kid.
Yeah. When
you look back on it, yes, it was a scary and volatile time. Yeah. I suppose that was one of the reasons. When my dad got the opportunity. He got the Midwest job, regional manager in the IDA Midwest, and that's the one he was after because that got him back down towards County Clare. And so we came back down to Limerick and we lived in Monaleen. But I have to say, I suppose from his point of view, it was a strategic move and he got us away, and it was a career move and we got back near home. But I remember leaving Ballybuffet and not wanting to go, just did not want to go, leaving people behind, because a lot of those people I've never seen again.
Yeah.
Because that's just the way it was. There was no connectivity whatsoever.
Yeah, once you left, and there was no.
Absolutely.
connecting on Snapchat or any other kind of Snapchat. Yeah, it's
No,
all
and
gone.
I
Yeah, yes.
remember rebelling coming to Limerick because I had no idea where Limerick was. I didn't know anything about Limerick. It was
Yeah.
just this town down, the southwest of Ireland, miles away from Ballybuffet. No idea where it was. I remember at the time, I told everybody, my parents, my family, that I was going to be a chef. And the only reason I was going to be a chef when I left school was because there was a famous chef training school in Killybegs in Donegal. So my idea in my little head at that time was, I'm going to go down to Limerick, put up with it for a little while, do my leaving cert, be a chef, and go back to Donegal. I'm sure that never transpired, obviously.
Well, what did transpire? Well,
Yeah, well, look at what transpired was I left school, did an average leaving cert. I didn't do college, no interest in that. Delighted to get out of school, and was working. I'll take you through this quickly. I was working in a warehouse for a while, and my mother, who was she was great for kind of pushing you on. She just got fed up with it. I was quite happy. I got a lift every day from Morrison's pub out to Ballineety, and I worked in this place and got paid nice money, and I was happy out. Um, but she had more ambitions for me than me. So
as
she
they do,
yeah,
they all
yeah.
do.
So she got me a job in an insurance company. So through some contact of hers from Dublin. So I went for an interview in a suit, and a suit was totally alien to me. I remember my best friend drove me to the interview, and I asked him not to leave. I went into the interview, did my bit, and when I came out, I jumped back into his van and we headed off in case anybody saw me in the suit. And I got the job, but I was to go to Dublin. And that was fine. There was a bit of an excitement. But what happened was there was a guy in the insurance company that was working. They had a branch in Limerick, and there was a guy in Limerick that wanted to get back to Dublin. So between the jigs and the reels, I don't know what went on behind the scenes, but I ended up starting in Limerick. And I suppose, look, and I never looked back. I've had a 30-odd year career in financial services. Um, the last one, so I think you said in the introduction, 15 years, 16 years working for insurance companies. And I never thought, Louise, that I'd be self-employed. I always thought I'd be someone who'd work for people.
A real leap of faith to jump in and set up your own business. I mean, a lot of us talk about, wouldn't it be great? I'd love to do something like that when you see when you feel maybe the freedom of running your own business. But how was it for you?
Yeah, well, I suppose what I was saying to you at the time there was, I you could only go so far in Limerick, in a regional town or city, in an insurance company. So if you wanted to push on your career and do other things, it meant moving. And if you go back to the history of my family when I was growing up, and we covered the west coast of Ireland. I mean, I used to get jokes about caravans involved and stuff like that. So I didn't want to do that to my own family. I created a nice lifestyle in this region. I liked Limerick City. I liked everything around. We'd the seaside down the west coast, only an hour away, and so on. So my view on it was, you know what? I can't go any further, but I didn't want to settle for what I had. So I made a leap of faith in 2000. It was the millennium and the changing and all that. So I decided, the last company I was working for was Canada Life. So I handed in my resignation there, and I set up my own business in October 2000. And to be fair to Canada Life at the time, I set up a brokerage, so I would have been given business to them anyway. So they were really helpful, and they gave me a leg up, and they guided me along, and they gave me every assistance that I needed to kind of, to make the transition from being employed into self-employed. But I've never looked back. I mean, I can't see myself at this stage ever working for anybody ever again. So it's amazing once you do it, the freedom you have. Like it is scary, and the thing about it is, if you want to feed yourself and feed the family, it's up to you. There's no paycheck coming in every week or every month. You got to get it yourself. And I've had some scary times, like 2009 and up to about 2012. That recession was really, really tough. It was very tough for lots of businesses, but the financial services business was hammered. We went. I remember my best year ever in business was 2007, on my own, and my worst year ever in business was 2008, the very following year. And I went from having 6 staff down to 2 staff in the space of 12 months because everything just stopped. So then the last company was Metis that you mentioned. So I joined with another Karl Widger, and we formed Metis Ireland. And it was a lifestyle financial planning firm. And we built up a very strong business in a pretty short space of time. But I got to a point maybe about 18 months, 2 years ago, where I just thought, you know what, I'm at a certain age now. I'm seeing the trends. I think I've done everything I want to do here, and I wanted to move on. So I was very lucky. I was able to get into a position last year where I could sell my shareholding in the business, and I was able to move out. And Metis are moving on with a new investor, and they're going to fire ahead. But I wanted to do something different. And this is where the whole Humanli thing came from. Now, I didn't really know, Louise, what I wanted to do, but I knew I didn't want to do anything in financial services. I'd done that long enough, but I built up lots of contacts and lots of people over the years that I got to know, and people who are interested in different things. And I'd also done lots of charity work. So over the years, you know, I'd raised money for charities, done different things, and I like doing that. And I have a kind of an altruistic nature in me that I like to try and help other people when I can. So I said, look, I'm in a good position now. Maybe it's time to start giving something back. So that's where Humanli came from. And how it all really kicked off was I had a couple of muddled ideas in my head. And I rang Helen Downs in the Shannon Chamber, CEO of the Shannon Chamber, one day about something totally unrelated. And I had to call up to meet her about something. And she asked me, she said to me, I hear you're leaving Metis, what are you doing? And I muddled out something to her that I thought I was doing, which kind of at the time it was a bit senseless, but it must have meant something to her, because she said, that sounds very interesting. We've done a lot of research on that. Come out and talk to me. And it kind of went from there. So I suppose to explain to people that are listening in what's Humanli all about, it's simply about this. There are lots of companies out there, corporates, businesses that are doing lots of good in the community. So a business gets, you know, people go to work every day and businesses turn over the cog, they make money, they pay employees and so on. But a lot of them also give back to their communities. Some don't and want to. Some do it very, very well. Some do it poorly. Others struggle as to how to do it properly and maybe, you know, how to tap in and do the thing efficiently. And the information that came back from Shannon Chamber in particular, because they got an LIT student in to do a survey on this, on this umbrella called CSR, Corporate Social Responsibility. And this is, Humanli sits in a part of that, and I'll explain in a minute. But what came back from the companies was that, look, at a lot of the time, it's a box ticking exercise. So the end of the year comes, we've got a bit of money put aside to spend on charities. So let's do something fast. And it ends up being a check written to somebody, a photograph taken in the paper, and that's it. So I've spent a lot of time researching this. We did our branding for Humanli through Tony Frawley and Frawley Branding. And I was very familiar with Tony because he worked with us in Metis as well. And I met him as well for a cup of coffee. And when I explained what I was trying to do, he understood it straight away. And I'm delighted with what has come out of that in the branding and the messaging. But we put a whole corporate deck together. So what we do, Louise, is we'll go into a company, we'll talk to them about what they're trying to achieve. We'll talk to them about what worked for them in the past in the social impact space, what didn't work, why it didn't work. We look at their branding, we look at their messaging, we look at what their brand aligns with, and we'll talk to their employees and send a questionnaire. So we call that a social impact assessment. Okay. When we do that, we get a lot of information back from the company, and then we put a report together, and we put a whole program of events together that we think fits what they want to do. And if they work with us, then we will implement that for them over a period, be it 3, 6, 9, 12 months. On the other side, Humanli is building a family of charities, community groups that will benefit from these corporates. So the idea is that we will sit in the middle, we'll advise the companies, we will look at the charities and community groups, we will talk about their status and try and get them up to a certain level. And I know that Brendan Ring was on the call earlier, but there's a certain level that charities can get to called triple lock. It's like a standard that they can achieve. And the charity regulator has actually made something similar it's a requirement as of 2021 that all charities have to reach a certain standard. So we're also putting a program to help charities to reach that standard. So if charities want to become part of the Humanli family, we can get them to that standard. We then include them in the family, and then we open up doors to them to benefit from the companies that we're working with on the other side.
And can I just interrupt you there, just to ask you, just in terms of that because as you probably know, the charity, the whole governance of charities has really tightened up in the last number of years after the controversies with Aware, and there's a couple of others where obviously things were not being done properly and money was being misspent is the most diplomatic way of putting it. And so there's a huge amount of, I suppose, charities now, and even small charities that might have only 1 or 2 members of staff, or even no members of staff, have an enormous amount of compliance. So does your organisation actually go down that road with them as well?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We're after, we've looked at that and we've researched that and we've a package put together. So we have a package for the corporates and we have a package for the charities. And included in the charity package is that if they want us to walk them through this process with the charity regulator, we will do that. Okay. We will charge them a fee for it. But as you said, it could be very valuable to some charities who are doing great work, but by virtue of their setup will struggle to achieve that.
Yeah, because it's hugely onerous. I mean, we have a full-time staff, and obviously I had to take on that part of the role, and it's paperwork like I have never witnessed. Really, it's a huge amount of boxes to be ticked and work to be done.
Well, you see, that was something, I suppose, in our research that we discovered. So that is another offering that we will have for the charities. And I think that, and I mean, the feedback, Louise, is that just what you've said there is that it will be very valuable. I think a lot of charities would be willing to pay a fee. You know, once the fee is reasonable, they'd be willing to pay that and let Humanli do that work for them. Yeah. And then what happens then is that, you know, if they're successful and they pass, you know, everything with the charity regulator, they're doing a couple of things. They're ticking that box with the regulator. They're now coming in as a member of the Humanli family, and now because they're at a certain level, they will have access to corporates that they mightn't have had access to before, because like in our travel and in our research, a lot of the companies have showed us, for example, a lot of the bigger American companies that are based in Limerick with HQ in the States, who they can deal with is governed by head office. So if a charity in Ireland, albeit a local charity doing great work, if it's not meeting a certain standard, HQ will not allow the local factory or whatever here deal with them. Unless they're at a certain level. So what we're trying to do maybe is get a number of charities up to speed at that and open more doors for them. So
and I presume I presume that the companies as well, then when they're working with you, they will then see that charity is brought up to that particular standard. Are you finding it then that you're going out and talking to various companies who had that problem but didn't really know how to tackle it, and that you're coming in to solve that, make that solution for them?
Absolutely. We see that it gives the company a bit of comfort. So for argument's sake, if you go on the charity regulator website and you see a charity is approved, that gives you comfort. So what we're hoping to do is we will have a list of charities and community groups that we're happy with. We've done the vetting and the work with them, and we're happy with them. And if we put them on our site, we're kind of we've got to be careful. But we are saying to a corporate, look, we've put them through a rigorous process. They've passed the test, so that must give you some comfort that you're able to deal with them. So yes, it does. It helps everyone on both sides, really. The other big thing on the corporate side, Louise, is that a lot of companies are saying to me that they write checks to charities and they never hear any more about it. Okay. So they don't get any return on their investment. So I've spent a lot of time in the last few weeks researching a thing called SROI, which is the social return on investment. That's a metric that you can actually, it's actually measurable, and there's an international body that you can plug into to learn about that. So Humanli, again, is going to become expert in relation to that. And the idea of that is that if a company writes a check for 50,000 or whatever it might be, So take it back to the beginning. We've done the assessment report. We've identified an area where it makes sense for them to invest or to help, and they write a check to a community group or a charity. The big thing, one of the big things after they do that is the feedback back to them to see what impact that money actually had. And this is what the SROI piece is about. So we will be able to go back to the company and say, look, here's what you did. Here's where the money went. Here's the people that were affected by it. The charity will come in from time to time to do a report back to the CSR people in that company. So there's a whole metric that can be built around that social return on the investment, so that a company can now say, well, do you know what? We spent that money. We know where it went. We knew it helped 10 families or whatever it might be, or it cleaned up a park area or whatever it might be. But we're trying to create that two-way street, that when the investment is made by the corporate, that the feedback, the charity has an obligation to give the feedback to the company to say, look, this is what you guys actually did. And if there was employees involved in the company, whether it was fundraising or whatever it might be, that they get feedback as well, that their efforts and what they did are firstly recognized and then quantified. Because think about it, and that creates feel good for everybody. Because if you're an employee in a company and you've set up some fundraising thing and you've raised a load of money, the check is handed over, and then that's the end of it. You hear nothing back. It can be a little bit disappointing for the efforts that you put in. But by working with Humanli, we ensure that these projects are back and forth until they get to conclusion, and that all parties that are involved knows exactly what's going on.
Okay. And tell me, do you have any idea? I mean, are you able to quantify the budgets that corporates, even in the Midwest, never mind all over Ireland? I mean, has there been ever any studies on CSR and how much money companies invest in that whole area?
It's massive. It's absolutely massive, and it's massive down here.
Okay.
Like there are companies operating in Limerick that have budgets of over £500,000
for CSR.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. It's unbelievable. I know. In my research, I know one company that wrote a check for €1 million to a particular organization. It was a charitable organization. So as I'm now, look at this is a new business, so I'm not going to pretend everybody that's listening that I'm a total expert. What I'm saying is there is huge money out there, huge resources with people, especially the younger people. Younger people joining organizations want to get involved in this type of work. And when they're working for a company, they want to do this. They want to do the volunteering. They want to do the fundraising. And we're saying this to companies. We're saying to companies that you need to integrate social impact as part of what you do every day. Because if you're out there as a company trying to get new staff, the millennials coming for interviews will ask you, can we do this type of thing? Do you have a CSR team? Do you have a facility in-house so we can, do fundraising, et cetera, et cetera? And if you're looking at them blankly as an employer, they're going to go and work somewhere else. And that is a fact. That is a fact.
Yeah.
So part of what Humanli is doing is we want to work with the companies that take this seriously. We want to educate the companies that still see it as something new that they're only touching on the fringes of, and really get them to get involved in it. And then we want to introduce it to companies who've never gone there before, because the world we're living in. Like CSR, there's 4 parts to CSR. One is sustainability, which is the environment, and companies are very, very, into the environment and looking after where they, Cook Medical, for argument's sake, in Limerick. Cook is not a typical factory. A typical factory in the old days was locked gates, high walls. You can't go near the place at night time. It closes down. Cook Medical have pathways, walkways, lighting down to the river. They encourage the residents in Castletroy to come and walk around their premises with their dogs and their family at night time. That's a small little thing, but that's the way they look at the environment and where they sit. So they're really small things. The other part of CSR is diversity. So diversity in the workplace, whether that's the male-female divide, whether it's ethnicity and having different races, creeds and religions working in your company. The third part is social impact, where Humanli sit, and that's you making a real impact as a corporate, taking that responsibility to make a real impact in the community that you're working in and have your business in and are benefiting from, by the way. So it's about giving back. And then the last part is ethics and privacy, which is another area. So that's your main CSR umbrella. But in that umbrella, we're looking at the social impact space. And
I'm going to have to. Oh yeah, well, yeah. Work away. Go on ahead.
Yeah, I was going to talk about specifically the lime tree and the bell table and the arts.
Yes,
and the arts.
yes.
And I have an interest in, well, music especially, but I have an interest in the arts because simply this: people get up every day, go to work, and there's fierce pressure on people these days. Mental health, and we hear about it every day, and people having breakdowns and anxiety and all this kind of stuff. And the arts, I think, are, it's overlooked for what it can give back to people. There's nothing better than going to a show at night time and chilling and relaxing and getting immersed in a play or getting immersed in a concert and just losing yourself for a couple of hours, and what that does to you and how it makes you feel and what the impact it has on your mental health. So I think that when Humanli starts talking to companies and starts really digging down as to what's important to companies and what they're interested in and what their people that work for them are interested in, I would be very, very confident that there is plenty of scope to get resources and funds for the arts in the future. So, in other words, getting companies to invest in things like the Bell Table and the Lime Tree Theatre. But from your point of view, it's about understanding what your offering is and how to package that to the corporates. But I would be very excited for hopefully being able to partner with people like yourselves and see can we develop that area, down the road.
No, and absolutely. I mean, and that's really why we really value the relationship we have with you, because we first met you about 2 years ago, and I suppose before I carry on though, I just want to remind everybody we're coming up. There's literally only 4 or 5 minutes left. So if anybody has a question they really want us to ask, be sure and put your name in the chat thing, the chat bar there at the bottom of the screen. But Karl, just I suppose what was really important to us is about just the knowledge of the sector and the business sector in the city and the Midwest. And we really struggled for many years it's all about networking, I suppose, in a sense, and it's getting that balance right, where we try and make as much knowledge about what we do and our social impact to the audiences of Limerick and the Midwest, but also then making sure that there's the kinds of people that the corporates and say the people with the CSR budgets can understand what we do and see how it makes, and us to prove that we have a very strong impact in that whole social space. So it's the kind of questions that you have and even the information you've given us has really brought that along. And I suppose what we want to do is let as many people know about what you're doing, because we find it is so valuable. I'm just looking here. I have a question from Michelle DeForge in the Dunamase Arts Centre. Michelle is asking, Karl, have you found that companies are paring back now because of the current circumstances you find them in, and are they starting to reduce their spend, or is it too soon to say?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because a few people have said that to me. I suppose there's a couple of ways I'm going to look at it from a Humanli perspective. Not every company has done badly during COVID. So there are some areas, there are some businesses that have thrived and pushed on and done well because of what's going on. So, if I'm to be, clever and strategic, we will be finding those businesses, and they're the ones we'll be talking to initially. I suppose the other thing to address Michelle's question is that part of what Humanli will do is trying to get companies to focus on their own people. So it's not always about giving something out into the community. Remember, the community is the team that you have working for you. So if you're a corporate with 300 staff, those people have dealt with the COVID-19 lockdown in different ways. Some are thriving, some have enjoyed time at home and family because they're living in stable environments, others haven't. And people are going to be coming back to you to work in different states of mental health. And one of the things we're looking at, and we've spoken to a couple of companies already, is working on doing something specifically for their employees and bearing in mind how they may or may not be feeling. So maybe doing some kind of a mental health, a wellness type introductory thing for them when they come back. That could be bringing in speakers or coaches or whatever over a couple of days, just to get people back into the space of, look, it's been a tough time. How did you cope? How are you feeling now? Before they just dive back into the work scenario to make money for their employer again. And we can help with that as well. And that comes under CSR and social impact spend as well. So I suppose to answer Michelle's question, in a general sense, yes, some of the SME, smaller companies, it's definitely gone down the line in terms of importance because they have other things to do and they got to get back on track themselves anyway. Their businesses have suffered, etc. But from a Humanli point of view, there's areas where we think we can help, and there's certainly businesses or areas of business that have done well during COVID that we can exploit.
Okay, great. I think that's a great thing to finish on, Karl. I suppose it's a long game, isn't it? I mean, it's not for this month or next month or even the next 6 months. This is something that is going to grow and develop over the years, the years ahead. So before we go,
look, if anybody wants to just connect with me on LinkedIn, that's kind of my preferred. I don't know if you have the link or whatever, but look, just look up Karl Daly on LinkedIn and send me a request, and we can chat if anybody wants to talk about anything, whether it's from a charity point of view or corporate point of view, or whatever.
Exactly. No, thanks a lot, Karl. And if anybody, even if you fail to find him, which you probably won't, but just contact us as well and we'll send on his details. I just want to make one final reference here. We had Brendan, you mentioned him earlier there, Karl. Brendan had to leave the session earlier, but he said congratulations to the Lime Tree and Karl for a fantastic session and wishing Karl all the best. We at Cleanest Foundation are looking forward to working with Humanli. So yeah, another great charity that is very close to all our hearts here in the Midwest. Karl, thank you so much. It was really fantastic talking to you, really interesting. And thanks everybody else for joining us. And hopefully we'll see you all soon. Okay, take care.
Pleasure. Thanks, Emil. Thanks, folks.